Good afternoon, Mark.
Hi, Khalil. How are you doing?
Great to see you, even though virtually. It has been a long time we haven't met. And thank you so much for today, because it's an interesting subject, the lockdown and the unemployment and whatever is happening in the market. I think an expert like you would add lots of value in terms of what are the repercussions of the lockdown, of rent, properties, and all of that. But before we start that, can you tell us a little bit about you, how long you've been in business and so on, and then we'll get into the details.
Sure, Khalil. Well, it's lovely to talk to you again today. Mr. and Mrs. Simons is a letting and property management company. We've been around for 25 years, and we look after primarily a lot of our clients have portfolios over London, and we take care of everything for them. I myself have a lot of experience in construction, property maintenance, as well as sustainability. So we have a very, very good team around us to deal with really most issues. In regards to the current property market, in terms of lettings specifically, I mean, we can touch on sales as well, but we specialize in the letting side. I think at the moment, it's still a little early doors. Obviously, some tenants are having issues with their income. There are obviously options open through the government's furlough scheme, self-employed scheme to help people, but that needs to come online, and it's not necessarily on tap at the moment. So we're trying to help tenants as and when there are issues to ensure that they are not under duress. And most of our landlords are understanding, and we'll find a way to help them because we're a family and we look after our tenants as well as our landlords.
Yeah, carry on.
In terms of the rental market, I mean, obviously there's a bit of limbo at the moment because it's difficult to view properties. A lot of people are doing it on videos, but you can't really have an idea about whether the market's fallen because things are in limbo. So I think it's really about what's going to happen in the next month or so. If things do relax and things get back to some sort of more normality, people are going to be able to get back on track, and they're going to maybe stay where they're living, or their jobs are going to come back online. I think if there's a significant impact to employment, then that's going to impact on the market because people won't be able to stay there. They might be going home if they're from abroad. They might not be able to afford the properties they're living in, and that could have an impact on the pricing of the market. So I think people have to be flexible and take the long-term view. And I think tenants appreciate landlords and agents that make an effort to try and look after them in difficult times.
I appreciate what you've said about you and your company, Mr. and Mrs. Simons, are taking care of tenants. And you did mention that the landlords are cooperative. Is that the case across the board, or do you expect issues?
Well, I mean, sometimes the landlords might want to give a rent holiday, and sometimes the tenant might have an issue with that. They might want a reduction in the rent as opposed to a rent holiday. So that's a question of trying to find an agreement between the parties and what's equitable and fair. So I think that, you know, if tenants can't afford it, but they're contractually obligated to it, then you've obviously got to look at what's reasonable and fair in the current circumstances, but obviously also thinking about the landlord's perspective. But obviously if the tenant can't pay, there's no, you know, it's difficult. But at the moment it's not too bad. You know, I'd say maybe 10-15% of tenants have contacted us, and we're helping them in whatever way we can. So I think it's a case-by-case basis, and looking at the individual tenants and their situation, and also looking at the landlord's situation. And yeah, that's the best way of...
Interesting. You've touched on the letting, but you also, now you're talking about the management
yeah.
part of it. And most importantly, the the tenant landlord liaison
Yeah.
advisory board, if you'd say, which is fantastic. Are these all of your services, or you get involved in other type of projects?
We deal with a lot of, some of our clients will ask us to project manage refurbishments of properties that might not be in good enough condition to let, because it's important these days that if you're letting a property that you do it to a reasonably good standard. That way you can ensure you find the right tenants and you get the right return. So we look after that, especially because we have quite a wide knowledge of property maintenance and fault finding, and we will project manage it for our clients, and in some instances we even help them with the finance, and then we'll take it at a later date from the rental income. So we also sometimes, at the moment, we've just dealt with a sale of a property for a client, and you know, and we've maximised the condition of the property, so when it's sold, it gets as much as it can in terms of the sale price. So we like, as you can see behind me, our motto is let and forget. We want our clients not to have to worry about the properties, and obviously you have to understand it's probably the most expensive asset anyone is going to have. So we like to look after all our clients' properties as though they were our own. So when we're spending money on it, it's our own money, and they can relax and rest assured that it's being looked after as well as they would look after it. And obviously we keep them up to date if there are any issues or maintenance issues, but in the main, they don't really have to think about it. They just know it's being looked after. We have hardly any void periods. We make sure that between tenancies there's a smooth transition to ensure the property is not empty. And we also are very keen to find the right tenants for the right landlord. So we won't let it unless we feel very comfortable that the people moving in are the right fit.
Do you think that this is what makes you different from other letting agents?
Well, I don't like to talk about other letting agents, but what I can say is that I love my job. I love helping people. My job is about dealing with issues as and when they occur, not putting them into a drawer. We deal with things immediately, and I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy solving problems, and being able to properly brief a contractor on any faults within a property is an essential skill to have as a managing agent, because if you know what the problem is, you can make sure that it's dealt with the way it should be, rather than the contractor telling you one thing and the truth being another. So that's what experience gives. It gives comfort.
Does this go back to your construction experience, or?
Yes. I'm not a builder, but I have a good understanding of buildings. I'm also a qualified sustainability consultant, so I understand how buildings function, and buildings are like people. You know, if you stretch and you do exercise, your body's better maintained, and same with a house or a flat. If you look after it, you maintain it on an ongoing basis, it's going to last longer, it's going to cost less money, rather than leaving it and then doing huge works to it because it's in a horrendous state. It degrades if it's not maintained.
What would be an advice to tenants at this stage?
Okay, well, I always say to tenants, when you're looking at a property, it's always good to ask as many questions as you can before you go and view it. Have a look at the particulars. Try and acquaint yourself with the size of the rooms, the floor plans. Are they big enough? The location in terms of transport. Have a look on Google Earth and ask the agent, what's the condition of the property? Is it managed by the letting agent, or is it managed by the landlord? I think it's always better to go with a professional. So if it's managed by a professional letting agent, that's better than managed by a landlord who's not, as a rule, you know, it's not what they do. And to be honest, sometimes there can be problems with that because they can get emotionally involved. And when you have a landlord dealing directly with the tenant, I never really think that's an ideal scenario, because there's a sort of a conflict of interest. Whereas if there's an agent, they can advise on the correct way of doing things, what the correct regulations are and the laws, and give a more sort of reasoned point of view, and also a buffer for the landlord, so they don't have to get emotionally involved. And if there are any issues, the agent can take the flak, as it were.
Yeah.
I always think that so tenants looking, they should look for someone, a property that is managed by an agent. I mean, hopefully the agent's a reasonably decent agent and they're going to maintain the property and do regular inspections. And also, when you go and visit the property, if it's in a poor state of repair, ask the agent, you know, is it going to be painted? Is it going to be cleaned at the end of the tenancy? You know, to my horror, some tenants have told me they've gone around to properties and the agent said, oh, well, this is how it is. But, you know, they should tell you it's going to be professionally cleaned. It's going to have repair and maintenance check at the end of the tenancy. And, you know, if you're paying rent, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for the property to be maintained as it should be. You know, that's what you're paying your rent for.
And one last thing, what would make a client give you an instruction?
What would make a client give me an instruction?
Yeah.
Well, I think that depends on the client, doesn't it? But I mean, I think a client has got to like you. You've got to have some rapport, and they've got to feel that they can trust you. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit like, you know, do you get on with someone? I mean, I think you've got to have a rapport with whoever the property you're looking after. And yeah, so I think it's a bit like meeting someone and having a chat with them and feeling comfortable with them. So I think that's the most important thing, feeling comfortable with the agent you're using. And the most important thing is that a lot of agencies have a very high turnover of staff. Mm. We're a family-based business, so you come to the family. You're not going to get someone one week and someone else the next week. So we're here. We've been here for over 25 years, so we're not going anywhere yet, I hope.
That was an interesting conversation, very valuable.
I'm glad I can help.
All the nuggets in there. Is there any last advice or comment that you would like to give to
I think, listen, if anybody wants any advice or help, feel free to drop me a line. I think, you know, remain positive and look at what you can do, not what you can't do, and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Mark, for a wonderful chat, one-to-one. I think lots of new learnings that you brought to our attention. And hopefully we'll meet up in the near future in person.
Sounds like the Queen. We'll meet again.
You take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.